in English with mix it some Afrikaans in there. I've got 3-4 people that can't speak Afrikaans, so if you can just do that. Yeah, so enjoy the course. Mickey will be on just after it is on. Mickey Schneider from Namibia.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start the course with a short video just explaining what EBVs are and why we actually use them, and then I'll start with the principles. So I'm going to share my screen. Please make sure that you have your device audio connected to Zoom, otherwise you might not hear the sound. Okay, I'm going to start it now.
Meet Mario and Maestro. If you didn't know their genetic backgrounds or how they were raised, it would be difficult to decide if Mario or Maestro was the right bull for you. They both look physically similar, but how do you know what genetics each bull will pass on to their progeny? What if one was younger and the other born to a mature cow? Or one had been affected by disease, and the other had access to better feed before the sale. You can't determine which bull will produce the better progeny just by looking at them. It's not that simple. How do we account for the factors which may affect how the bull presents on sale day, and most importantly, how its progeny will perform and ultimately affect your profitability? We do this with estimated breeding values, or EBVs. They're the best prediction of an animal's genetic merit for a particular trait and an indication of how an animal's progeny will perform. EBVs allow you to compare the real difference between the genetics Mario and Maestro will pass on to their progeny. Currently, you can only compare EBVs within a breed. There are EBVs for many different traits that impacts the performance and profitability of your herd, including fertility traits, calving ease traits, weight traits, carcass traits, and other traits such as temperament. All EBVs are reported in the units they're measured in, for example, kilograms for weight and millimeters for rump fat. EBVs are generated from the data your participating stud breeder collects from the animal in question, as well as from its parents and other relatives to provide this estimate of genetic merit. Let's take the EBV for 400-day weight. Mario is actually physically heavier than Maestro, but their genes tell a different story. With Maestro's EBV at plus 44 kilograms compared to Mario's at plus 32 kilograms. The physically younger and lighter Maestro is actually 12 kilograms genetically superior to Mario for this trait. Since Maestro's progeny will receive only half their genetics from Dad, his progeny will on average be 6 kilograms heavier than Mario's at 400 days of age. Now let's look at the EBV for rump fat. When we compare the two bulls genetically, Maestro has an EBV of plus 0.5 millimeters, while Mario's EBV is plus 2.5 millimeters. Mario has a 2 millimeter higher EBV for rump fat than Maestro, and since only half this genetic average will be passed on, Mario's progeny on average will have 1 millimeter more rump fat than Maestro's. As you can see, simply selecting bulls on their visual appearance alone has limitations in identifying the bull that will have the biggest impact on your productivity, which is why EBVs, which are a measure of the genetic merits that will be passed on to the progeny, are an essential tool to be used alongside structural and temperamental assessments as well as a bull check pass. When applied to bull selection decisions, EBVs can significantly improve your herd's performance and profits for many generations to come.
So now I'm going to start my presentation now. Sorry, I just need to open it. So as you can see, we need EBVs to determine the real genetic difference between animals. We cannot just use the phenotypes, what we see. So I'm going to go through a few selection principles that is important to understand in order to understand EBVs and how we should use them and how we should select on them, etc. So first off, it is important to understand what animal breeding is actually about. So we say that we are doing animal breeding, but what does it actually mean? So we need to do selective mating of animals with desirable traits to maintain or enhance these traits in future generations. So we want to make sure that the next generation is genetically better than the current generation. That is what animal breeding is all about. And the traits of importance for us now may change over time. That is also important to keep in mind. So we have different environments in which we want to select animals, and there's different traits that we want to select: carcass traits, milk traits, behavioral traits, etc. So a trait is a characteristic of an animal that can be observed or measured. So if you can measure it, it's a trait, and then you can actually select for it. The phenotype is the observed category or measured level of the performance for a trait in an animal. So that's what we see or what we measure. That's the phenotype. So the phenotype of the animal, this is one of the most important equations in animal genetics. It tells us that the phenotype, what we see in the animal, is due to its genetics and the effect that the environment has on the expression of these genes. So the genotype is the genetic makeup of the animal, and that is what we are interested in when we do animal genetics and breeding. So what is important when we consider selecting for a specific trait? What should we keep in mind? So the first thing is that there need to be some variation in the traits that we see and measure in animals in order for us to select for it. So we have two different types of traits. We have the quantitative traits and we have the qualitative traits. The quantitative traits is traits that when you measure them on a large population of animals and you plot the measurements, you will receive a graph like this one with a normal distribution, with most of the animals around the average or the mean. So the traits that fall into this category is, for example, your weight traits, your carcass traits, etc. Then you have the qualitative traits. Those are the ones that you can put in categories. For example, the animal is polled or the animal is horned. So you have different categories. So normally the quantitative traits is affected by many genes. So there's many underlying genes that determines what the animal will weigh or its carcass characteristics, etc. With the qualitative traits, they are normally affected by only one or a few genes. So it's sometimes easier to select for them than for some of the qualitative traits. So again, the variation that we see in the population is due to the genetic variation that exists within the population and due to the environmental variations, so difference in feeds, etc., sickness, etc., that affected the performance of the animal. So normally if you have a lot of variation, it's easier to select for or to gain some improve your genetics than it is when there's little variation and the animals that you actually select is only a bit better than the average of the population. Then the second thing you have to keep in mind is that you need to be able to measure or to quantify the traits with simple equipment, and you need to do it on farm accurately in order for you to select on this specific trait. Then the third thing is this trait needs to be heritable. Now heritable or heritability means the proportion or the portion of the phenotypic variation, the variation that we see that is due to the animal's genetics and that is passed on to the offspring. And it normally varies between 0 and 1, meaning when it's 0, there's no genetic component. The environment is the main factor affecting the trait, and 1 is all genetics. So it's the variation you see is purely genetic variation and there's no environmental effect. So it is important that the variation in the phenotype, what we see, there needs to be a genetic component to that. And what is also important to remember is that heritability is a population measure. So no one animal has a heritability for a trait, but for example, in Brahman, South Africa, the heritability for weaning weight might be 23% or so. So it's a population measure. Just quickly on the heritabilities of the different traits. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but normally the reproduction traits, your days to calving, etc., is lowly to mediumly heritable. Your growth traits are medium to highly heritable, and your carcass traits are also medium to highly heritable. Heritability is also expressed as a percentage sometimes, and when a trait is highly heritable, the performance you see in animals will actually be carried over to their offspring. So for example, if you have high performing animals, they tend to produce high performing offspring for that specific trait. With your lowly heritable traits, the environmental effect is higher. So the performance of the parents reveal little about the progeny performance, but it does not mean that you cannot select for it. It might just take a few more generations to make some genetic progress. The fourth thing that you need to keep in mind if you want to select on for an animal or for a trait, sorry, it needs to be of economic importance to you. Okay, so Breedplan has various traits that they currently produce EBVs on. You have your weight traits, your fertility traits, your carcass traits, and some other traits, for example, net feed intake or feed, what do you call it, residual feed intake, or your docility, etc. So, as we saw on the video, we cannot determine which bull is genetically better just by observing their phenotype or measuring their phenotype. we actually need some more information. We need the EBV. So we want to isolate the genetic part of their performance, see what's their genetic ability for that specific trait. So we want to see their estimated breeding values. So what is the estimated breeding value? It is an animal's genetic merit or value as a parent. So it tells you what is the chances that this specific bull is going to produce high weaner calves, etc. What is also important to remember is that it is an estimate. An animal's exact breeding value will never be known, so it's just an estimate, and therefore it will change over an animal's lifetime as more information is included. So, for example, if you have a calf and it receives its first EBV in a EBV run, that EBV will change as the animal receives his own measurement for the specific trait, and as he has some progeny and they are also measured for the specific trait. So just quickly going to look at the simple calculation of an EBV. So you take the weight of the animal minus the weight of the group. Now this group is the contemporary group, the group of animals that this animal grew up with and shared an environment with this animal, times the heritability. So just on contemporary groups, in the next course we will focus on contemporary groups, and I'll go into more detail in contemporary groups then. I'm not going to go into detail now. So if you have the animal that weighed 380 kilograms at 400-day weight minus the group average of 350, the difference is 30 kilograms times the heritability of 0.3. The animal will have an EBV of plus 9 kilograms. So this is just a simple calculation, but it is the cornerstone around which estimated breeding values, on which it is built. So it's very important to understand this. The animal is only directly compared to this contemporary group of his. But they also include other information within the calculation. So they look at the pedigree information, the performance of his father and his mother and his grandfather, etc. All the related animals, his own performance when he's old enough to receive or to be measured for the trait. Then when he has progeny, and there are also performance recorded, those measurements are also included within the calculation, and also the performance in genetically correlated traits. So for example, your animal might be measured for 200-day weight, but not for 400-day weight, but they can deduct the 400-day weight from the 200-day weight. So they also use the correlated traits as well. We'll look at genetic correlation a bit later. So this gives you an idea of the weight that the information carries within the calculation. So when the animal does not have any measurements of his own, the pedigree information contributes the most to the calculation. Then when he's measured for his own performance, that also counts. But as he starts to have some progeny, their information becomes more and more important. And above 10 progeny, the progeny's performance counts the biggest portion towards the animal's EBV. And around 50 animals, you can see that the pedigree information and the animal's own measurement does not count that much anymore. So what is also important to remember is that only half of the genetics come from the sire and the other half from the dam. And in the calculation, they use these relationships between the animals to determine how big the weight should be that they should place on the related animal's performance. So for example, a parent and a son or a daughter is 50% related, grandparent, grandchild, 25%, etc. So just quickly to again look at the EBVs of two animals. So we have a cow with an EBV for say 200-day weight of +4, and the bull's EBV is +12. So we expect half of the calf's genetics to come from the dam. So +2 from the dam and half from the sire, +6. So we expect from this specific mating that on average, the calves will be a +8. If we look at two bulls, one with an EBV of +12, the other one with an EBV of +8, and we want to see the difference between them, we take half of the EBV, so +4, compared to +6. So on average, we assume that the progeny of the bull on the right will be +2 kilograms heavier than the bull's progeny on the left. And what is important to remember, it is on average. So for example, if you have 100 offspring from each of them, on average, the bull on the right's progeny will be +2. You will have some progeny that is much heavier than the other one, or you might have progeny from this bull on the right that is actually lighter than the bull's progeny on the left. So genetic correlation. So we often see that traits are genetically correlated. So they vary together. If you select for one, the other one also changes. And this is due to them having underlying genes that is the same. So they are influenced by the same underlying genes. So it might be a positive genetic correlation. As you select for the one trait and it is increasing, you will also increase the other trait. Or it might be negative, meaning that as the first trait increases, the second trait decreases. So we can use the genetic correlation between traits to our advantage, but it might be a disadvantage as well, and we should keep that in mind. So for example, birth weight and weaning weight is positively correlated. Birth weight and calving ease are negatively correlated. So as birth weight increases, calving ease decreases. Scrotal size and age at puberty is also negatively correlated. So as scrotal size increases, age of puberty in female offspring decreases. 400-day weight and mature cow weight is also positively correlated, and that might be something that we do not want. So we want to increase 400-day weight, but we might want to keep our mature cow weight at a certain level. So if it's favorable, we can use it for indirect selection. So we call them indicated traits. So these indicated traits might be easier to measure. So for example, if it's easier to weigh an animal for birth weight than to score animals for calving ease. So we can use birth weight as an indicator trait for calving ease. It might also be less expensive to measure the indicated trait. So for example, if we measure scrotal circumference, it is less expensive to measure than to measure or to observe the age at puberty in the female offspring. And the indicated trait might have a higher heritability, or it might have a higher accuracy. So these are examples of when we would want to use indicator traits or the genetic correlation between traits. It might be unfavorable. So for example, if you select for the one trait, there might be an undesirable change in the other trait. For example, weaning weight and birth weight. If you keep selecting for weaning weight, your birth weight will also increase, which might lead to calving difficulties. Then there's also accuracies for EBVs. So when Breedplan calculates EBVs, they also calculate an accuracy for that specific EBV. So the accuracy of the EBV is an indication of the amount of information that was used to calculate the EBV. So how many measurements for the related animals, the animal itself, measurements on his progeny, etc., were included within the calculation. So as the accuracy increases, it is more likely that the EBV that is calculated is a prediction of the animal's true breeding value, and less changes will occur when adding more information. So the higher the accuracy, the more stable the animal's EBV becomes. And it is reported in percentage. So for example, if you have an accuracy of between 0 and 40%, this is considered low. It is a preliminary estimate, and it could change substantially. An accuracy of between 41 and 65% is considered low still, but it is useful for screening animals, and it can still change substantially. Normally, this is when the animal has its own performance. Then 65 to 80% is moderately accurate, and you will see that the animal then has some progeny that was actually weighed or measured for the specific traits, and it is more reliable. Between 80 and 95% is high, and it's unlikely that the EBV will change much. 95+%, this is very high. It's a reliable estimate of the animal's true breeding value. Okay, so the accuracy of EBVs is influenced by a few factors. The heritability of the trait influences the accuracy. Higher heritable traits will normally have a higher accuracy with less information. So you will normally see that the weight traits have higher accuracies than, for example, your fertility traits. Then the accuracy of the parents, as they have more information available, there's more information available for the offspring's EBV calculation. Then the amount of information available on the animal and the progeny itself. And then the contemporary group size also influences the accuracy of the EBV with bigger contemporary group sizes leading to higher accuracy EBVs. And also if there's other genetically correlated traits that were actually measured, they also increases the accuracy of the specific traits EBV. Then we can quickly look at genetic gain. This is the last topic I'm going to present before we give over to Nikki. So genetic gain or genetic improvement is what we want to achieve. So there's this quite complex formula for calculating genetic gain, but I'm going to quickly unpack it for you to make it more understandable. So first off, we have the selection intensity. So the selection intensity is an indication of the amount of variation or the difference between the average EBV of the group and the EBVs of the animals that you actually select to become parents of the next generation. So it's the difference between the average EBV and the EBVs of the group that you select. So the higher the selection intensity, the higher the difference, the faster genetic improvement will be made. And then selection accuracy, again, is an indication of the amount of information that is available on the traits that you want to select. So the higher the accuracy, the faster the genetic gain will be. And then you have the genetic variance. Now, the genetic variance refers to the amount of genetic variation that exists within the specific population. So the more variation there is, the easier it is to make genetic improvement. So, okay, and then at the bottom of the equation, we have the generation interval. This refers to the average age of the parents in a population at the birth of their offspring. So it's the average age of the animals that I select to become parents of the next generation. So if I select younger bulls, the genetic interval will be smaller and I will have more genetic gain. If I select for very old bulls, they will decrease the genetic gain. All, keeping in mind that these animals that I select is actually better than the current population or population average. Or just if I think of my herd, I want to select animals that are genetically better than the average of my herd. Okay, so what is important is we want to increase genetic gain, so we need to increase the selection intensity. So if we refer back to the percentile bands that we spoke about in a few courses ago, so you have the animals that are in the top 10% or the top 20% or the bottom 10 or 20%, and then you have your average at 50%. So if my herd is, for example, for weaning weight in the top, on average in the top 60%, I want to select animals or bulls to become parents of the next generation that is above that. So I want to select bulls in the top 20%, for example, for weaning weight, if I want to improve weaning weight. So that refers to the selection intensity. How much better is the bulls that I'm selecting than the average of my herd? Then accuracy of selection, we can only increase this by sending in more performance records so that we have more information available to increase the accuracies. And then we want to decrease the generation interval. So we want to select the younger bulls. But normally when you select your younger bulls, their EBV accuracies are normally lower. So their EBVs might change more than your older, more proven bulls. So yeah, you always need to keep a balance when selecting your bulls. Okay, and that's my story. We can have a break and just, ask a few questions if you would like at this stage before we get to Mickey. So you can just unmute yourself and ask a question, please. Okay, any questions?
Is on. Maybe from my side, what is the average generation interval for a bull in say, South Africa, on average?
Well, normally for cattle, we look at 7 to 8 years, but I'm not sure for the South African population what is the current average. But in some breeds, we see the tendency of older bulls that are being used that increases the generation interval.
Okay, so the easiest way to think about it it's the average age of the average age of the progeny on average of the bull. So let's say the bull's got 8 years of progeny, then that bull's generation interval will be 4 years if the progeny span over an 8-year period. And so in the stud industry, the last thing we're looking for is bulls that are 10, 12, 8, 10, 12 years old, because you're not making any genetic progress if the bulls are that old. That's why there's a big push internationally to be using even 2-year-old bulls. I know in South Africa that's difficult in extensive environment, but that's why young bulls are so popular. But then they must, you must be selecting on things that make genetic improvement.
Hi, Michael. Would it be true then to say that if you are using young bulls, to use a larger number of young bulls going to a small number of females each, so that you're spreading your risk?
Absolutely right, Mark. And this is Mark Hayter from Zimbabwe. It's nice to have you guys on here, Mark. But that's exactly the case. So if you're going to be using young bulls, use 2 or 3, 4 young bulls rather than just one old bull. Exactly right. Any more questions? We should have lots of discussion. This is an easy way to do it. Okay, if there's not any more discussion, I'm sure Mickey will give us a lot of discussion. Mickey, are you ready for your presentation? Mickey, are you there?
Okay, hear me?
We hear you clearly, Mickey.
Okay, my internet is a bit slow. I'm staying a bit further away, so let's see if this works. I tried to test it with Izan this morning. It did work, but it's now an hour later, so let's see how stable my internet is. Okay, Michael, Izan, can I carry on?
You can carry on, Mickey.
Yes, please, Mickey, and welcome, Mickey. It's really a privilege for us to have you on this Zoom session as well.
Okay, I just want to share my screen, and I did it with Izan this morning. It worked, and let's see if it's still on. Seems to be my computer went to sleep while I was listening to Izan, so let's see if it starts up. All right, but while we are waiting, while I'm sharing my screen, welcome everybody. Today I was asked to share with you my experience or how we do it here with our Brahman stud here up in Namibia. This is my personal way of doing things. It has developed over the last 20 years. So I've showed you some, or will show you some data, some spreadsheets, which I think might not be very accurate, but or very clear to see. But I can then maybe swap to other screens and see if we could do it better. Am I sharing my screen now, Michael? Is on?
Yes, Mickey, I can see it now.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on
Okay.
now, so you can continue.
All right. If it's off, or just let me know, please. Okay, these are our selection criteria in practice, and the underlying issue here is to improve profitability. That's always what should be at the back of your mind. Is it really profitable for whatever you select? So I will just discuss a couple of things. I will discuss data capture for making selection decision. I will then spend some specific time on the cow herd and the heifer herds. We have some breeding techniques and principles which we apply. The herd sire assessment is crucial because they are the drivers for genetic gain. We will look at the genetic trend of our whole herd as of April 2020, and then we will look at some sires. I've listened to what you said just now about young sires, but I will just go into that in a bit more detail. So keeping a record is a basis for any decision making, and we make use of three basic sources here to make decisions here in practice in the kraal. The first is herd data capture. I'm doing that for more than 20 years now. We've got different herds running at different locations. Each herd is grouped into a data set which we use. These data sets are Excel sheets. They are very, very compact. I can give one A4 page to my herder with all 50 or 60 or 70 cows with calves. So this data capture and formed in Excel sheets is a very important basis for our selection and management technique here. The second one, very important, is we run a herd master program. It's a data management program where we put in all the data, all the weights, all the traits which we measure and record. Not only that, but we also keep a good record of the sales and the customers here. I'll go into that a bit later. And the third most important source is, of course, also the Breedplan database, from where we extract a lot of information to make decisions. So here we start off with the different cow herds. And the first selection tool which we use usually is the structural soundness and docility. for Brahmins, and we specifically focus the last couple of years now. It's no use having 15 structural issues which you're looking at. We are looking at 3 basic things which we've decided here in our herd, which we want to improve. The first one is the navel or the sheath for Brahmins, of course. The others, and the docility or temperament. And that NUT, navel udder temperament, you will see in all the Excel sheets which we have. And then we also give a structural overall rating of the structural soundness of that animal. These are the 4 basic things which we look at when we talk about structure here. If I would breed with another breed like the Simmentalers, which we always also have, I would put in here pigmentation, I would put in here coat, a color or coat, the coat of the animal, and maybe if it's got brilla or no brilla. And so every breed has got its own issues, and every herd has got its own issues. These are our topics which we want to look at. With temperament, I think we've sorted that out. You will see it in the sheets. We are focusing on others. At the moment, the navel issue is an issue which we want to look at later, because we've done a study with the Namibian Brahmin inspection score sheet with the University of Bloemfontein. Dr. Mike Fair has made one very important conclusion there, and that is that the sheath of the navel of the dams have got an 80% influence on the sheath size of the male progeny. So this is one issue which we are tackling at the moment. So basically, for us, structural soundness, these 3, plus the overall structural rating which we do. The others we score at birth of a calf. That is the most important date when you score the udder. It's color-coded. A green is desired, and it is unwanted. We will see that later. In these sheets, we also put in various weights, body condition score, hip height, etc., pregnancy status of the cow. A short comment, which is necessary to, if you've got a couple of 100 cows, that you can refer back and make a memory of what happened there. It could be anything. It could be calf dead, it could be aborted, it could be she produced that sire or whatever. And then we've got the sires running with these cows, which makes it a very nice tool for submitting days to calving. These are the cows, that was the sire. And then at the end of that Excel sheet, we've got the sire and dam of that female, which is for us very important. If you've got 24 sires which you're using, and about 90% of those are your own progeny, your own sires, then it makes it too closely related animals to the sires. So we keep that in mind.
Can I come in here? Just one
yes.
Can you show us the spreadsheet that you're using?
I will do it just now. I just want to finish the slide. The dam calves ID are also on that spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet. Typically, I've just selected one little portion of one spreadsheet of one cow herd. We call it the good. There are 10, 12 other herds. This goes down to about 30, 40, 50, maybe up to 100 cows. This is just one extract of one cow herd. You can see in the top left-hand corner there, there's still an old cow. It's an excellent cow, 19 years old now. She's produced a couple of stud sires. That's an embryo cow, which we think she's good. They are the NUT values, which we score. She's got a navel all out of 9. 1 is bad, 9 is good. These are the navel issues here. These are the others. These are old cows. This is a temperament score of the cows, and then we give it a specific rating, A, B, C, plus and minus also. So an A minus cow is a structurally very, very sound cow. B is a delete here if in terms of structural soundness. Then in that Excel sheet we're going on, that's 2017, all the weights, these are the hip heights, these are body condition scores, these are in 2018 January, we go to May 2018, not every time every animal is scored because we only weigh sometimes those cows which we wean. But at the bottom here, and I could switch now to the other screen, I shouldn't do it maybe, but if I add up these columns very easily and I've got to wait for all the cows, I can then know the total biomass of that herd. I know my area where they are, and I can evaluate the stocking rate very quickly and very easily. Another very important one is this trait here, which is the if that animal is pregnant or not. WK means winter calf. TSK would mean summer calf. That dam was not pregnant on that day, on the 13th January. Now, there are the comments here. Is a sire where they are with now in January 2020, in the last breeding season, bulls have been taken out now. This is the dam, this is the cow sire, and then we start with the next part of the spreadsheet to the right, which is the calf information. So this is the cow, that's a calf. I just want to mention these others of the score of 3, they are marked red. This cow is 15 years old now. Her udder has deteriorated. A 15-year-old cow, she will be on the way out now. Now, if we go exact spreadsheet, calf information, we tier the information, and there's the calf information here. We do all the weights in here, the calf, sex, date. Then on to the right of it is a very select tool for us into detail now. I just want that all sets on the same Excel. We'll go to D just now. Will be the final rating is in or out. I hope that is clear. These sheets now, but I won't.
It sounds like you're breaking up a little bit. Maybe you can just repeat that for us. Hello, Mickey? Mickey? Suzanne, is jy nog nou?
Ek is nog hier so, Michael. Mickey, kan jy ons hoor?
Dat is nou jammer. Ek sien Mickey breek nou redelik op. Kom ons gee hom net 'n bietjie kans.
He's on.
Okay, Mickey, are you back with us again? Hello, Mickey? Mickey? Ja, Izaan, ons sal net met vra weer te kyk of hy kan inlog.
Is reg, ek vra vir hom. In die tussentyd kan ons dalk enige vrae hanteer wat julle nog mag hê.
Susan, ek het 'n vraag hierso. Dit is aan my persoonlik gestuur, maar ek dink ons kan dit met almal hierso hanteer. Die vraag is, wat sal gebeur met die genetiese vordering as jy langlewende koeie het wat langer in jou kudde bly? Die intensiteit van seleksie sal dan hoër wees, maar generasie-interval sal langer word. As ek reg verstaan, is dit dan voordelig of nadelig vir die kudde? Dit kom van Henny af. Henny, wat daar gebeur is, solank die genetiese meriete van die dier nog steeds hoër is as wat die gemiddelde is van die koeikudde, gaan jy nog steeds genetiese vordering maak. So die belangrikheid is wat is die genetiese meriete van die kudde? As jy 'n rugbyspeler het byvoorbeeld wat 20 jaar teruggebore of 50 jaar teruggebore is, maar hy is nog steeds beter as vandag se speler, dan gebruik jy hom, want geneties gaan hy nog steeds 'n bydrae maak. So dit gaan oor die genetiese meriete van die dier en hoe daai dier vergelyk met die genetiese meriete van die kudde. So jy kan hom nog steeds gebruik al is dit 'n baie ou koe. Ek hoop dit antwoord jou vraag.
Sorry, did I lose you? Maybe my drum beat here up in Northern Namibia is not so good. Sorry, I don't know where I lost you, but I just got a WhatsApp from Izan that I was lost somewhere. Izan, maybe you can help me where I was last time. Michael, Izan, can you see my screen?
You were still busy with a spreadsheet, Mickey. You were still busy with your Excel spreadsheet. And
okay.
You were just finishing off explaining your Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. Was it this spreadsheet here? Was it this spreadsheet here, Michael?
It was the
Die vorige ene?
Yeah. Die vorige ene.
Oh goodness! So I lost you a long time ago. Okay, these are the cows. Just remember, I just selected one cow herd here. These are older cows. I realize this, but these are super cows. Let's see how it works. If I go down my spreadsheet here, I did explain this. These are the weights, then the herds, and then right at, if I go to the next one, there's the calf again, and then we have got the calf detail. Did I go up to here, Michael? Izan?
Dis reg, Mickey. Jy breek nog so 'n bietjie op. Ek wonder of ek nie van my kant af die PowerPoint moet share. Dat ons dit eerder so doen en kyk of dit beter gaan nie.
Okay, kom dan stop ek share en jy kom op, okay?
Ja. So laat ek hom net gou oopmaak aan my kant.
Sorry for this.
No problem at all, Mickey. I see we've got a whole new group of producers this morning that are logged into Zoom here, and a warm welcome to all of them. I think the information you're sharing is exactly what they want to hear. Give us a yes there, everybody. This is exactly what you want to hear. Remember to raise your hand if you've got any questions.
Okay, Mickey, ek het hom op as jy weer wil begin.
Izan, ek wil net weet, kan
are you going to...
Will we get this
Hello?
presentation?
We can arrange with Mickey if he's willing to share the presentation.
Yeah, I will delete all the little comments which I made with each cow, maybe. No, I've got no problem. Izan, we can do that later. We can discuss it later. No problem. Izan, is it a full screen now?
At full screen, yes.
Because I can see the other slides on the left-hand side here.
Okay, Zon, maar je moet niet afgaan, né?
Okay, skus, wat sien julle op hierdie stadium?
Dit is nou die voorpad zijn.
Ag nee, dan is hy. Kom ek probeer net weer.
Nikki, we won't be like Trump. It says that the Chinese have taken all your internet bandwidth up north.
Yeah.
It was part of the deal of them working there.
Yeah. We've got, they're working on 5G in Namibia now, Michael. Can you imagine? So, Izan, while we are waiting, if you're ready, just tell me. We can then, I just want to summarize. We've got 3 data sources, which are our Excel sheets, which we use for more than 20 years now. We've got a good data set. Every year in 2020, 2021, we will make up a new one with all the cow herds in one sheet, with all the sires, with all the bulls, with the weaners or the sale bulls. And that's a very, very compact source of data. Izan, can you share this on the big screen or not? Because I've got no control now.
Well, I see it. Can you see it, Michael?
All right. Maybe it doesn't matter.
You're on slide 8, Izan. Why don't Mickey's on slide 6, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I have the second spreadsheet open now.
Just
Okay, no, we don't see the spreadsheet. We see the PowerPoint.
Just go to slide 6.
Okay, let me just one.
Slide 6, Izan.
Yeah, I have it open now here.
Slide 6.
Yeah.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Cow herd.
Yeah.
No, I can't see it.
I can't see it either, Izan. Just check your share.
Are you sharing it?
Yes, I am. Can anybody else see it?
No, they're going to see what we see, Izan.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share again.
Okay.
Start it again. Okay, I'm sharing it again.
There we go. Now
There we are. Thank you, Izan. Okay, can you see my cursor? Probably not, right?
No.
So I can't show with my cursor. Right. Okay, good. Doesn't matter. I'll try to explain. Just imagine now on the left-hand side of the screen with the cow details, with the weight, with the body condition score, a pregnancy status. Then we come to the calf here on the left-hand side. And then the right-hand part of this spreadsheet is the crucial part, actually. You can see the structural traits again, and then we will come to this later. But this information of the visual score ABC, the range and grazing index, the intercalf period, number of calves which the cow had, the retention, very, very important. I'll explain that later. The income of each cow over the years. Just a small comment here, where she is, and then the final rating. Further down, you will see 2 cows with a 4. They are probably out in the next breeding season. The one due to other a navel score, the other one because she has got a low retention, and I must check her further. Okay, Izan, can we go to the next slide?
We can do that. Mickey, you'll see I gave you permission to control my screen. If you can just...
Can you do that again? Can you do that again? I just saw a small blip. Izan?
Okay.
Izan, what do we do?
Izan, I suggest you just keep going on your side.
Okay.
You're on the next slide.
Okay, I just want to recap quickly. The first part was this intensive data collection in terms of Excel sheets, which we've got for more than 20 years, long before we started with the other programs. The second important data source is Herdmaster, which we run, which is a herd management program. All the animals are loaded for each stud. We've got different stud. We've got a Zimthaler stud also. We've got a stud in Angola. They're all included here. All the births are recorded. All the weight and traits are recorded. We do a crush site recording, which we can talk about in a different talk, automatically from the crush pen onto the computer. That data is synchronized to various devices via cloud database. If you want to do that, speak to Janine, and we can have access to this Herdmaster data from various locations wherever we are. So this is very important to us because I'm not the only one here running the stud here, a couple of other people too. For example, my wife is doing the sales recorded and the customer detail, each animal which is sold, even slaughtered, it's recorded against that animal. The exact price is recorded. If it's sold as a winner, that is also included. And the last point is, which we get from Herdmaster, is the intercalf period, number of calves, the retention, very important, I referred to just now, and the total income of that female. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, Mickey.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. The third source of data comes from the Breedplan database. You can go to download files. You can get your EBVs, your selection indices. On the top right hand, I've got my April 2020 Namibian Brahman Breedplan EBVs. You go in there and you've got your whole herd with all the EBVs and much more data in there, which you can access, which is an excellent tool. You can download it. At the bottom of that page, you've got your genetic trends, which I will refer to later. One guideline, which I want to emphasize for total herd recording, because that is what we want to do, is I referred to this earlier. The more data you've got, the more accurate are your breeding values. So the total herd recording is done according to the LRF Breedplan test plan. We did discuss this 14 days ago, but I just copied in the first two lines here. It's a whole a procedure from birth up to slaughter, what you should do and how you should do it accurately to improve your accuracy and your breeding values and your selection tools. And the last one is a completeness of information recording, which is also a very nice tool, which will give you where you roughly stand with the data you're submitting and the quality of data. We stand at 4.5 out of 5. You get a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star rating, and that gives you a good indication where you are. Is on?
Yeah.
Is on. Hello.
Yeah, Maria.
Can you carry on with the next slide?
Right.
Unless there are questions now. Okay, I just want to show this concept. This is the percentile table.
You're going very, very fast. Let's see if there are any questions from anybody.
Okay.
It's good to keep it interactive. So let's see if there are any questions from anybody.
You can just unmute yourself if you have a question.
Now, we'll just put up your hand and I'll answer you.
Okay, no questions, Michael. Is on. We carry on. This is the percentile table. I think as a stud breeder, you should know this. This is all the EBVs, the range of EBVs, and where you stand in terms of that breed are you the upper 10% or in the lower 10%? This is a very important concept, and we will also refer to this later. Can we just carry on, Izan? Next slide, please.
Excuse. It's not going to the next slide. Is this the next one?
Yes, I think so. Just
the
go to the next slide, Izan. Okay, now this is a bit complicated, but I will try to make it simple. If you don't understand it in detail, don't worry. We have done this long before selection indices, and we still make use of this. Selection indices give you a good indication of the overall profitability of EBVs. We do that also, but we also are very focused on individual EBVs of an animal. So we will, let's take birth weight, the top left. The green is good, the bad is we don't want. So the average for this herd nationally is 1.6 kilogram birth weight. We want to be in the dark green area, which is a bit below birth weight, below the average, and we give it a weighting of 10. So we've got different weightings here for different EBVs of that specific trait. And you can go through all the other traits also. 200 days we want to be high, 400 days we're coming a bit down, 600 days we're coming a bit down. We don't want those big animals, mature cow weight, we want to be at average or even a bit below average. If we go to the bottom line, the bottom graph, you've got the milk. We are aiming above average, scrotal size, of course, also carcass weight, and then the carcass traits, the eye muscle area, rib fat, rump fat, we want to be in the top values there. The rib fat, rump fat is important for us. It gives, we have, maybe not scientifically, but these are animals which are early maturing, and they make a good product, a good carcass from the felt without much additional feed. The intramuscular fat, okay, the other breeds which focus more on that, but we've got that genetic also in our herd. On the top right are the three selection indices, the rangeland grazing index, the weaning index, and the feedlot index. We want to be in the upper portion, and that you do with the different individual EBVs. Then you see two bars here, the one in the middle, the one below. We do a weighting of all EBVs and just the growth EBVs, and for that purpose, we, in addition to the individual weighting, we give a weighting to the trait to come up to 100. Okay, maybe a bit complicated now, but it's working very well. Can you just carry on to the next slide, Izan? Okay, this is the same herd which we had just now. It's just an extract. On the right-hand side, the colors are the structural colors, which is the overall structural rating, the navel score, the udder score, and the temperament. Then we've got a rating for all the growth, and then all EBV ranking. Now, if we look at all EBV ranking, we can see that second cow stands at 50. Of all the cows which we have, the ones at the bottom go to 352, and there will be others which are much further down. So we can immediately see where this particular cow stands in the whole herd. What's her ranking? Then to the right, we've got this color column here, which is the color for each EBV. And if you go from left to right, you can quickly see if you are in the kraal, without looking at each individual figure, you can very quickly see where the deficiencies are and where she's good. So these are I've told you before, these are older cows. If I would go down to the next spreadsheets, to the younger cows, this sheet here on the right-hand side will go green. I won't show it to you now today because Izan is showing the screen, controlling the screen, but that's an important factor. At the bottom, for this specific herd, you've got the average EBV or the average score for that particular trait in that particular one herd. Izan, can you carry on? All right. I've just made it a bit clearer now. That's the first section, which is the score section. Can you go to the next slide, Izan? I've just made it a bit clearer that you can read it better. It's the same cows which we had before. I just used a portion of that one herd. There you can see the EBVs of those animals, that cow. The three selection indices are on the right-hand side, and you can see there's nothing red there. There's one about 10 down. The wean index is 20. It's going to get red. This is probably a cow which we are going to look at in future. Next slide, Ilan. All right. So we monitor the dam herd EBVs, and we look at individual EBVs. We've created a window which we want to be in with EBVs, and we also use the selection indices. And as I've said just now, I just take one A4 sheet, I go into a herd at a cattle post, and I've got all the information of that particular herd and that particular animal in front of me. The final cow and heifer assessment, where she goes, into which herd, or if she's taken out, is, I've referred to it just now, it depends on the navel, udder, and temperament structural scoring, the range and grazing index, which gives a good index of all the EBVs for a particular environment and for a particular market. The intercalving period we are still using, we will change that in time to days to calving. The number of calves are important, the retention is important, and the total income is important. And then we get a final rating for each cow. Next slide, please, Izan. Okay, there we are. Next slide. You can still hear me, Izan?
I'm hearing you, Mickey.
Okay.
Do you want the
just tell me? Yeah. No. Just go back again. I've shown you this slide before, but this is where we make a final selection decision on each animal which we have maybe once or twice a year. It's the visual rating. It's a summary of all of this, of the range and grazing index, of the intercalf period, the retention, very important. And the retention, we consider a heifer going back into the herd, or a male, a bull, being sold as a sire, even commercial sire. If it's slaughtered or if it's dead, then there's no retention there. From herdmaster, we get the total income of that specific animal, and you see the animals which have a 220,000 income, and they're animals about the same age which have got a much lower income. If we go further down, those we have deleted already. Then we come to the final rating at the back. The 6, 7, 8s are our better cows. There's one 8 cow, the second from the top, she's got a 6 out of 9 retention. She's got 11 calves. She's got a good rangeland index. She's got, in specific, good fertility traits, which I made the note here, which is not included here. She's a B plus cow, a good temperament cow, and she's an old cow, and she can still make a contribution. I come to the age of animals I will refer to later, but maybe I should say it now. I have got old animals still, yes, because they've got the better genetics. I think we in extensive animal breeding are not there yet that you can know for sure that each young sire is a potential good sire. I think if your breeding values go up to 80, 90%, yes. I think the dairy is there. I think the pigs are there. I think the chickens are there. In extensive cattle breeding environment, which we have not selected long enough to have this generation interval much quicker. I know that's the preferred option, and I would like to have it that way also. But there's some good genetics in the older generations which we still use. Next slide, Izan, please. Okay, these are some of the breeding techniques or principles which we use. Every few years, make a complete change of your mixture of your herd. We've got 10, 12 herds, female herds. Make an effort to swap them, to make major changes. This will increase your linkage, and this will increase your accuracy. Sires, change them regularly for every breeding season to different size into a cow herd. The main genetic drivers for change are our stud bulls, not the females so much. It's the stud sires which make the change, or most change, both visually, structurally, and genetically. And we pay really a lot of attention to select good stud sires. We make use of AI to get in new genetics, but this must be from proven record sires. It's a good outsider bull. We need that genetics in our herd to have this outsider influence in our herd. We use genetics to make also national and even international genetic linkages for Brahmins. We've done that. We've used a lot of semen now from Australia. The next generation stud bulls, which are young now, will be as Australian genetics, and then we can compare ourselves internationally. The Brahmins have done that once. We are in the process to do that on a more regular basis and have an international genetic evaluation, but then you must be well linked. The third bullet, or next bullet, is semen quality. Not only scrotus size, the semen quality is much more important. There are all the standards for that. We do heifer track scoring for fertility of each heifer. We've done that last week again. Then it's ultrasound carcass scanning of all animals, males and females, at the age of 400 to 600 days. We've implemented this year a sense subsystem for heat detection for post-Taurus cattle, where we hope to have a better information on the cycling of those heifers. Early maturing heifers are indicated. There are two other issues. The one is meat tenderness. We've introduced genes by the old gene star system in the 90s. It has paid off. There's a newsletter which we sent out which will show that. And then I want to make special reference to the Gentex Sol RFI station, where we do measure feed efficiency, and the Brahmins have got now, in the last few weeks, 8-10 weeks, we are on a continuous monthly run of EBVs for RFI, net feed intake, or residual feed intake in this case. You will see no selection for that yet. There's still a large variation, but we are very strongly focused that this is the next big profitability issue which we have to address. Next slide, please, Izan. Okay, now we come. These were the cows. Now we come to the size. If you've got a large number of cows and you want to change the genetic trend of the herd into a certain direction, you can only do it with your sires. And it's not only with one sires, all your sires, your battery of sires, that collection of selected to achieve your breeding goal. These stud sires are assessed on all the stud sires with all the breeding values. The one I will show you now has got a lot of information in, and you probably can't see it clearly, but I wanted to show you the actual Excel sheet, but we can't do that now. We look at the individual EBVs for each stud sire, set for a certain window, a selection indices, very important environment in a certain market. And then if we summarize an average of each EBV for every trait, you can get a good indication big trend. I'll refer to that just now in more detail. Take account of the AI size and select them also. We've got 4 or 5 Australian stud size, AI size, which we use now in our female herd. And then I will show you some quick assessment tools of EVV graphs, which will get to just now. Next slide, please. Izan.
Hello, Mickey.
Hello.
I have the next slide open.
Michael. Okay, I can see that. This is a slide I was talking just now. These are all the stud size used in January 2020 for the, I put another 2 there, so sorry. January 2020, which we used, I think 24 sires here. Older sires on top, you can see the blue highlights, which means trait leaders in the national herd. And then you come to the young sires, which are at the bottom, which are 18 months old, which we're going to use now in the next herd. But for each EBV, you can now summarize or average out that for that specific trait. And at the bottom of that upper table, you can see a red line there, which are the averages. Izan, maybe you can just highlight that one line, please, for me. That red line at the bottom. Yeah, there. These are the average EBVs for those battery of sires. To the left of that, we've got the number of progeny of each size. We've got the number of herds they're in. The number of calves analyzed, the number of calves scanned, etc. At the bottom, the same thing for the AI size, which we used. Now, the next slide will just show that one red line at the bottom. Next slide, please, Izan. Okay, I've just made that a bit bigger again. Just as extract of the top portion of that Excel sheet. On the right-hand side, again, the structural traits. We look at the dam udder. That dam's udder went to 3. Big question mark here for the next round. We know if it's DNA, it's a sire verified, parent verified, number of progeny, number of herds in, number of progeny analyzed, scanned, etc. And if we go to the right of that, is our next slide. Is on?
Mickey,
Yeah. There are the EBVs on there, and with the range and grazing index on, and the other indices on the right-hand side. And important is the accuracy of those animals. Now, if you look at the top bulls, which are the older bulls, the birth weight and the growth EBVs are in the 80s, deep 90s. That is what you want. You want these high accuracy bulls because if they've got good EBVs, desirable EBVs, they will make an impact. With the younger bulls, there's still a lot of variation, and you're not sure. A young bull, which is 18 months old, when his own data comes in, when his progeny comes in, as Ilan has explained, that EBV can still change a lot. But these EBVs are fairly fixed. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a red line I was talking about. That's a summary of each EBV for each sire. It's the red portion is the average. All of those 24 bulls which are put into the herd in January, their average birth weight is EBV is 1.4. At the bottom, you've got the breed average. So let's look at this. We've got a minus 1.7 for gestation length, which is better than average. We've got below, all those bulls have got a below average birth weight. In our environment, extensive, this is what farmers are looking at. Isan has referred to calving difficulties. We want to be also in our window below that average. And we've achieved that with the last bulls. The average of the accuracy is 81%. That includes the very, very young bulls also. And then we come to the growth traits, which are above average. So what does it say to you? The battery of bulls which we selected in January, which we put into the cows, have got a curve bender characteristics. Low birth weight, above average growth. That's what we are aiming at. Milk is average. We are working on that. It was one issue which we in Brahmans didn't look at in too much detail, but we will now, when we've in the next couple of years, I think we will spend more on milk, but it's average. Scrotal is above average. Days to calving is above average. It's minus 1.4. The carcass weight is above average, and then the next ones are all above average. That's where we want to be. And we've got intermuscular fat, which we are actually below with all those sires which we've got, and the docility score is also above average, and then the selection indices which are above average. So with this selection of sires, with those EBVs, we will drive the next genetic trend. Isan, next slide, please. I will now, I've got a couple of genetic trends and then I'm finished. If you look at the gestation length, our herd is a red herd, the red graph. The national average of Brahmins in Southern Africa, South Africa and Namibia included, is green. So that's where we want to be for the gestation length. Birth weight, we are genetic trend below average. 200-day weight, we have gone above average and then we've dropped down. We will have to look at the next generation of sires, how we can change that. But we've seen with the battery, which we've chosen in January, I'm sure we will force that graph up again. The 400-day weight is above average. Just carry on, Ilan. The 600-day weight is above average. Bottom left corner, mature cow weight, we are on average. So although we are above average with the growth, we are still on average with the mature cow weight. These two are strongly correlated, positively correlated, so it will be difficult to push that mature cow weight down, but that is what we tend to do. It's not always very easy, but we want high quick growth and low final weight. The milk, I've said it just now, you can't pay attention to all the traits, but we've paid attention since 2016, and you can see immediately that you force the graph up, and we are a bit above average now. The scrotal size, above average, is on, carry on. The carcass traits, days to calving, below average, that's where we want to be. A carcass weight, above average. Eye muscle area, that is your muscling, above average. And then very important for us, and we specifically have selected bulls in the last couple of years, 10 years, for that trait, because we do a lot of scanning, is the rib and rump fat. I've said these are early maturing animals, and these are animals which you can market more easily off the felt in a good condition. Next slide. That's rib fat. Then we come with the rump fat. Intermuscular fat is above average. I don't know what happened in 2015, but these are the genetic trends of individual traits. Next slide is on, gives the three indices, and you see that that's where we want to go with the range and grazing index above average, the wean and the feedlot. And you can only achieve this is it does fulfill to drive those EBVs into that direction. Izan, I can conclude here. I've got a couple of photos which I want to show you, a couple of stud sires, but maybe if there are questions, we can just stop here. Or let's just carry on and then we can ask the questions. We have selected stud sires, the older stud sires also, but if I look at the stud sire, that bottom table is a quick glance. That bull is a trait leader for 4 traits. He's got 69 progeny. He's a 2 herds, 53 progeny scanned. All the traits which were submitted are listed there. And on the right-hand side, you can see for the last few months, the net feed intake, the post-wean and final, they differ a bit, but we have got EBVs for that, and Brahmins have also got an EBV for docility, which is even 84%, which is very good. And then very nice, this tool from Breedplan, if you go to EBV graphs, this gives you a quick indication of what that bull looks like. We want to be all the traits on the right-hand side of the average. That would be ideal. Okay, this bull has got a lower milk. We have to live with this for that bull, but he's got a lot of other good traits. Can we carry on, please, Izan? Let's just run through a couple of quick animals. This stud sire was sold to South Africa. He's a trait leader on 5 traits. Accuracies, therefore growth in the 90%. He's got 196 progeny. He's got scanned progeny of 102. And then the graphs here, we would like to have not so much birth weight. I would like to have a better rib and rump fat. And then U is the net feed intake, which is lower here, or higher. We want it lower. We haven't selected for that in much detail, but that is where we will focus on in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Next slide. This was an exceptional sire, a trait leader also, 113 progeny analyzed. He probably had more progeny, but those were analyzed. EBVs in the deep 80s. He's got, if you look at his growth, EBVs in the top bar chart, he's in the upper 1-2% of the breed. Milk is lower. He's got is in the upper 1% for scrotal size. He's in the upper 5% for days to calving. He's an excellent bull for feed efficiency, in the top 1% probably, and all his selection indices are also in the top 5%, and an exceptional bull. Next slide, please. That is Astral. He's a trade leader also for 5 traits here. Net feed intake, not so good. We have to attend to that. But he's a curve bender bull. He's got lighter. He's a trait leader for birth, and he's a trait leader for growth. So he's a curve bender bull, and together with that, a trait leader for birth and for a curve bender bull for birth and growth, and very good selection indices. Next slide, please. These bulls, yeah, this one also, he's got a 25, a trait leader. All the most EBVs to the right-hand side. You can carry on, Izan. There's still 1 or 2 photos still left. This is one of our size which we have, which could have had a better birth weight, but most of his traits are to the right. He is used at the moment for specific reasons. Carry on, Izan. That's the last slide coming up now. That's an AI bull, I think. Yeah, which we used. This was very exceptional. The Namibian bull. He's a trait leader for 6 traits. He's got 271 progeny, scanned progeny 231 scanned, number of daughters 73. He's used in 6 herds. You can look at his accuracy. These are older stud size with an excellent record of traits and EBVs. Milk is a problem there, but most of his EBVs are to the right-hand side. And we are using progeny of him as a new stud size. Izan, that is my story. Maybe there are questions.
Any questions? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for that, Nikki. This is excellent. I'm sure, hope we'll get some discussion. Maybe the easiest is just to put up your hand, and then we see if we can just unmute you so you become part of the conversation. So we have it one at a time. You can just put up your hand. We can then do it like that. Come, where's Mark? Mark has normally got the first question. Mark Hayter, are you still there, Mark?
Yeah, I am. I was trying to put up my hand and I can't find out where to put it.
Okay, no worries, Mark.
Hello, Mickey.
Hi, Mark.
Mickey, I just wanted to comment on the use of the, I see all your bulls you're using are very positive in their multi-trait indexes. And there's different ways to get to a multi-trait index. I just wanted to comment, and a lot of them were quite low on milk. Now, would you say that milk could be considered a mid-scoring index, that you don't actually need to select for high or low milk, but somewhere in the middle could be ideal, and as long as you're getting the same results down in your multi-trait indexes?
Mark, if I can answer from our side, Brahmins are used mainly here as for crossbreeding. So my personal and our expectation was that you can't focus on everything. The milk will hopefully come from the other breed in the cross a breed program, typically Emmentaler Simras. If you talk about indexes, you talk about, I suppose, selection indices. Your question, not selecting high milk, I've heard that story. That is so. We want to be above average. We don't want to be below the national average for milk. But if you select for really high milk, then I think that's observed here. That's not scientifically proven, but you will have a less hardy cow, which is geared to produce milk and maybe not so much beef, yes.
Thanks, Mickey. Michael, do you want to comment on that from, say, other breeds' point of view? I just see a trend in, say, the Angus, that the high milk bulls are the ones with lower fertility now. I know that's good. Is that a where you've got correlated traits that are negatively correlated?
Yes, Mark. This is always the challenge with selection, and while we have to have milk in the herd, I think milk has a threshold, because if you've got too much milk in the herd, you're negatively affecting fertility, and there's a slight negative correlation between milk and growth as well genetically. So there has to be an optimum. But of course, you'll have some breeds that don't have, or some herds, individual herds that don't have a lot of milk. And for them, remember the correlations are not 100%. So you're always going to be able to cherry pick what bulls you want. So you can find bulls with good milk and with good growth and with good fertility, but it's keeping that balance. But if you got already on average for milk in your herd, I wouldn't be pushing milk either. But if you way below average for milk in your herd, then I would go and look for a bull with good milk in him. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Michael and Mickey.
Okay, vir die res van julle kan gerus julle mikrofone afsit en vra as daar vrae is. Hierdie is gratis, so julle kry gratis inligting. Gebruik die geleentheid. It's always interesting, Mark and Mickey, when you do a course like this, it's not as interactive initially as a normal course that comes, but that will come over time. Any more questions from anybody? Well, if there aren't any, Mickey, I just want to thank you very much as well. Izaan, dankie dat jy hierdie by mekaar gesit het. And if I'm well, just wait, I think there's one more question here. Okay, no, it's just a few thank yous. I see people on the group say they've learned a lot. So thank you to everybody. Izaan, wanneer is die volgende kursus?
Die volgende ene is volgende week Vrydag.
Okay, next Friday. And what's the topic, Izaan?
Ja, volgende week Woensdag die 13de. The 13th.
Volgende Woensdag.
Yes.
Volgende Woensdag en wat die topic?
Measuring traits and contemporary groups and genetic linkage.
Okay, critically important. And who's giving that course, Izaan?
Me and Mr. Derek Leroux is going to look at the completeness of performance report.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we'll see you guys next week, next Wednesday then. Thank you very much for attending. Excellent. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Mickey. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Izaan.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Keep well. Okay, bye-bye.
Keep well. Bye.